All right, so today we'll go over some of the different advancements and achievements of the Chinese. The Chinese had a lot of different discoveries that they used to their advantage over time. One of the main ones being silk. Now, silk is really one of the first really fine luxury fabrics that was created. Prior to silk, most fabrics were either made from a very crude cotton or a linen, or leather, just stuff that wasn't really very soft or fancy. But silk was a very fine, very smooth, very delicate kind of cloth that will eventually become kind of like a status symbol. But it was very profitable for the Chinese because they were the only people that knew where it came from and how to make it. But we know that it comes from a worm. Okay, it's actually the cocoon of a worm that looks very similar to this. Yeah. So the story of how silk was discovered is that there was a woman walking through a courtyard and she saw these little cocoons. She picked the cocoons, boiled them, and was able to take the threads from the cocoon itself, spin them into a thread, and use that thread to make the cloth. But today we still use silk for a lot of different things. Men's neckties, a lot of women's clothing like shirts or blouses, scarves are made from silk. Usually that's satin. Today we've got different versions of like synthetic silk. Satin is like polyester. Like a lot of times your athletic clothing that looks like shiny and feels kind of soft, that's polyester. It's not silk. Silk is not like I said, it's still kind of a very delicate fabric. It's used mainly for dress clothes. But like I said, for a long time the Chinese were the only people who knew how to make it. And a lot of people from other countries wanted it. So they were willing to send traders and merchants to China to buy it and take it back to Europe and the Middle East. But for a lot of people, it turned out to be a status symbol. If you were seen wearing silk, people knew that, well, the only place they could have gotten that is somewhere in China. It must have been expensive. So it was kind of reserved for wealthy people. Another similar creation to the silk was porcelain. Now, when I say similar, I mean it's similar in the fact that it's, again, one of those things that people from Europe and other continents and countries really wanted, but the Chinese were the only ones who knew how it was made and how to get it. So porcelain back then was used mainly for things like pottery, plates, cup, vases, things like that. But it was made from a very, very fine, smooth clay that just didn't exist in other places. But they were able to keep the process of making it a secret, just like they did with silk. But it was also another one of those things where it became a status symbol or status thing in Europe, where you would have guests come over to your home and you would break out this very nice, fine pottery for them to eat off of that people knew can only be purchased from China. Some of you guys might have grandparents or parents that have a very fancy set of very fine dishes and things that they maybe only use for holidays or special occasions. They might call it the China or their China. That's kind of where that comes from, or where that kind of tradition comes from. So the question was asked, why is this stuff so popular back then if it was made in China, and today things that are made in China are considered cheap? the difference is we're talking 700 years ago with this silk and the porcelain and stuff. And it was usually made by hand, by one person, and it took a long time to make. The stuff that's made today is usually made in a factory, either by a robot or some other cheap material. So that's really the big difference. But today, porcelain is not nearly as rare as it used to be. Porcelain is used for a lot of different things. Main things that we use porcelain for today is floor tile. A lot of floor tile is made from porcelain. And then bathroom fixtures, things like sinks, toilets, shower basins, freestanding tubs, all those types of things can be made from porcelain today. But here are just some examples of that, or this would be similar to some of that original porcelain. But you can kind of see it's a pretty fine, pretty delicate, some people would say it's almost brittle, if not treated properly, type of a clay. This is an original vase that was made from porcelain. I believe this one's Ming Dynasty is the age on it. But usually it was used, like I said, they would make it very ornate, very decorative. It was meant to be a fancy, kind of a status symbol product. Now, something else that's going to be pretty unique and traded with other areas is going to be China's written language. Now, with their written language, there are several other countries in the Asian continent that have a similar writing style to the Chinese, but it is all different. But their writing style uses characters to represent either whole words or phrases. So they don't use an alphabet system like we do. Okay, it's usually just a character. Looks very similar to this. That would either represent a whole phrase or a sentence. But there are over 50,000 of these different characters in the Chinese written language. Now, before you ask, how do they remember all of those? They don't. Okay, that's like saying, okay, there's 70,000 different words in the English dictionary. Well, we don't know all 70,000 words. We know the ones that we use a lot. So, just like with that, they know the characters, how to draw the characters they use frequently. But the time that it would take to draw out these characters, again, keep in mind that the one character represents a lot more. Like I said, a whole sentence or a phrase. You'd have to look it up. Yeah, you'd have to look it up. Yeah, you would. It would work just like a dictionary. Yeah. What's that, Robin? No. If there's someone who knows, if we're talking about the English dictionary, that I don't know. I'm sure someone out there maybe has memorized it all or has learned a good chunk of it. As far as every word in the dictionary, I don't know. I would say probably not. As far as Chinese characters go, same thing. Maybe, but probably not. I don't know off the top of my head. Now, as far as how these items got traded from China to parts of the Middle East and Europe, it's all going to be done along something called the Silk Road. And obviously it's named after the silk that people really wanted. But the Silk Road wasn't an actual road, okay, and it wasn't a single road. Silk Road is a network of different trading routes. So this map here shows several different colors and several different paths. These are all the different ports and ways that people traveled from China to get those products to different areas. Now, along the Silk Road, obviously, those different products are going to move back and forth. But as traders are moving from one place to the other and going from trading post to trading post. Other stuff's going to be traded as well. Okay, you're going to have people exposed to different cultures, people exposed to different languages, different religions, different ideas. So this trading network is what really helped different groups of people kind of discover things about each other and other parts of the world. When we talked about religions earlier in the year, a lot of them are going to spread through these trading routes. Just as people come into contact with one another and talk about different things, it's what's going to help spread a lot of these ideas.
Oh, God. I've been sitting here for 2 hours. I'm thirsty, and there's sand and everything I own. This is the last time I let you plan our vacation. Can you tell me? Thanks. Sure. But right now, of course, kind of a misleading term. It wasn't ancient trading routes connecting East Asia to the Mediterranean. There was in the same area by sea. And it wasn't just about silk. Spices, precious metals, art, of value were traded on these routes. Overland, and brought together cultures that had never interacted before. Very date back more than 5,000 years. These were mainly developed between neighboring tribes. Over time, the gaps between these unrelated. In the Greek conqueror Alexander the Great pushed east into Central Asia. About dynasty expanded its influence westward. Chinese merchants exported silk to the new territories. Yeah, nobody back. Anyway, CE, the silk routes were stable enough for goods to travel from China all the way to Europe. Around this time, silk made a huge splash in Rome. Fashionable Romans couldn't get enough of the luxurious new material. Meanwhile, all kinds